All right, 8.2 notes, verify trig identities, page 5 on your notes. Today we're going to apply trig identities to fractions. I'm going to show you two different ways to do this today. We're going to start with the harder way first. Step 1 is to start on the side that does not have a fraction, so the side without a fraction. Then you change all of the trig values to sine or cosine. Then you get a common denominator, and then you add the numerators. And then just a reminder, we learned the reciprocal identities and the quotient identities in the day before. And remember, I don't use this top row or this last one. So I'm using these two here and these two here. That's about it. So number 1 says to verify the trig identities by adding like denominators. So when I look at this, I'm going to start on the side that does not have a fraction, so that's the left side. So I'm going to write the word left. By doing this, I no longer have to drop down the right side each time. I can just say I'm simplifying the left to make it equal the right side. But don't try to treat this like an equal sign. We're not going to add or subtract something over. Instead, we're only working on the left side to make it look like the right side. So looking at this example, we're on the left side, we're going to convert to sine or cosine. So secant of x, if we use our reciprocal identities, we can see that this is equivalent to 1 over cosine x. And then we can drop the plus. Sine of x is already in sine, so I don't have to change anything there. Now I need to add these. In order to add fractions, you need a common denominator. So that means I need to multiply this fraction by cosine x over cosine x. So this can drop down, and this becomes sine of x times the cosine of x over 1 times cosine x, which is cosine x. Now that you have a common denominator, I can add the tops, 1 plus sine x cosine x, over my common denominator cosine x. Notice that's the right side, so it checks. For b, starting on the side without a fraction, we have cotangent of x. We're going to convert this to sine or cosine. I don't ever use this. Instead, I go over here. Cotangent of x is cosine x over sine x. So we're working on the left side, say what side, and we're making it cosine x over sine x. Plus secant x. Secant x we use 1 over cosine x. You need a common denominator, so I'm going to multiply this one by cosine x over cosine x. This one needs to get multiplied by sine x over sine x. So by doing that, I have cosine x times cosine x, which is cosine squared x, over sine x cosine x. And then plus 1 times sine of x is the sine of x, over sine x cosine x. Now that you have a common denominator, you can add the tops. Cosine squared x plus sine x over my common denominator. And that's the right side, it checks. For c, starting on the side without a fraction, that's the left side. We're going to convert this to sine or cosine. So secant is 1 over cosine x. And notice it's being squared, so it's 1 over cosine squared x. Plus cotangent of x, remember we use the quotient identity, cosine x over sine x. So we need a common denominator, so the left side needs to get multiplied by sine of x over the sine of x. This one needs to get multiplied by cosine squared x, so we have that on the bottom. Now we multiply. 1 times the sine of x is the sine of x over cosine squared x sine x. Plus, on the top, I have cosine x times cosine squared x, so that's being cubed now, over cosine squared x sine x. I have a common denominator, so I can now add the top, sine of x plus cosine cubed x, all over the common denominator. It checks. For d, starting on the side without a fraction, that's the left side. The 1 here is just going to drop down. You can write it 1 over 1 if you want. Doesn't really matter. But tangent, I'm going to convert to sine or cosine. Remember, the tangent is equivalent to the sine of x over the cosine of x. To add these, I need a common denominator, so I'm going to multiply this by cosine x over cosine x. So now I have cosine of x times 1, which is just cosine x. Dropping this down, I have a common denominator, so I can add the tops. I get cosine x plus sine x all over cosine x, which is the right side. It checks. So I'm about to do this exact same problem, but I'm going to do the other side instead. So now we're going to start on the side that has a fraction. Then you divide each term by the denominator. And then you change to sine or cosine. And simplify. So this time I'm going to start on the side with the fraction. Notice this is the exact same problem as the last one. So on the right side, I am going to notice that both of these terms are being divided by cosine x. So I'm going to break these apart. So I'm going to rewrite it as cosine x over cosine x plus sine x divided by cosine x. Cosine x over cosine x is 1 plus sine over cosine of x is equivalent to the tangent of x. Notice that's the left side, so it checks. So this is just another way that you can solve these. It's really up to you. For b, starting on the side with the fraction, we're going to break it apart. So this is going to be on the right side. This gives me 1 over the sine of x plus sine of x over sine of x. So 1 over the sine of x is the reciprocal identity over here where it's equal to cosecant x plus sine x over sine x is 1. Notice that's the left side, so I'm done. Number 3, slightly different. We have to verify the trig identities by distributing. So notice you're not going to distribute on the left side of the equal sign, so we're going to work on the right side. Always say what side you're going to work on. So on the right side, cosecant x, if you recall, is equivalent to 1 over sine x using the reciprocal identities. And this is going to just stay cosine and sine because it's already in cosine and sine. Now I can distribute. So this is going to get multiplied over. So it's 1 times the cosine of x, which is cosine x, over sine x, plus distribute. 1 times the sine of x is the sine of x, over the sine of x. Now we convert. Cosine x over sine x is equivalent to cotangent x by the quotient identity. Plus sine x over sine x is 1. And notice that the left side, it checks. Try B. So you should have done the left side because that's the side you distribute. Secant x, the reciprocal is 1 over cosine x. And then we are going to drop this down. We distribute. So it's 1 times cosine x is cosine x over cosine x. 1 times the sine of x is the sine of x over cosine x. And then cosine over cosine is 1. Plus sine over cosine is equivalent to the tangent of x. That's the right side, it checks.